Welcome back for another episode of the Cannabis Community Insider. Thank you for joining us on our last one just a couple moments ago. Now we're segueing into our next episode, which is going to focus on legislative topics. Today, we're joined by our co-host, Mark Peysakovich, as well as our very special guest, Illinois State Representative Emmanuel Welch. Today's conversation is going to be focused around social equity updates, what the plans are for 2021, and some insights into what might be happening at the Black Caucus. So with that said, Mark, take it away.
Representative Welch, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Mark, Abraham, thank you all for having me. I am still in my basement in quarantine for a couple of more days just to be extra safe, even though I've tested negative for COVID-19 now, just being extra safe. Still recovering. It's been a long couple of weeks, but I was looking forward to joining you all here today. So thanks for having me.
Well, you are doing an extra tour of duty. The only other person I've had this experience with is David Welter, your colleague on the Republican side, who also did one of these while he had COVID. You guys are freaking amazing. Well,
as someone who spent a couple of weeks in his basement, there's not much you can do. So you hope that your strength holds out so you can Zoom into a meeting from time to time.
Well, thank you very much. And, I'll just note that to have somebody of your caliber on the program is great. Chairman of the House Executive Committee, name on a very short list of people who could become the next speaker whenever that might be. A neighbor of mine, a good friend of my good friend, LaShawn Ford, your seatmate. So a lot of connections. Great to have you. But to take you back when this cannabis legislation was being passed, what was sort of your role? What were you pushing for at that time? Because I know you have an agenda that's related to equity, that's related to diversity. It's been great to see. A lot of us who want to, sort of end up on the right side of history support you. But how does that translate into sort of what, as cannabis was going through, what were you working on in terms of that issue?
Well, Mark, first of all, thank you for, again, having me on the program today and speaking to this amazing community. I want to first say that I've always been a supporter of medical cannabis. When I joined the legislature in 2013, I was honored in 2014 to vote for HB 1 that created medical cannabis. And it was really something to be proud of, and a program that really you didn't hear a lot of issues with, nothing but accolades about it. And to have colleagues from all across the country reach out and ask, how did we do that? It only made me more excited to want to support the legalization of marijuana for recreational purposes. I wasn't at the table as one of the lead negotiators on the bill. That was other members from our caucus, both the House Dem Caucus and the Black Caucus. And then there were others from the Senate Dem Caucus and Senate Black Caucus at the table. But they kept us regularly informed, and we got to chime in and give our thoughts. And equity was certainly something that was center and a primary focus for me and many of my colleagues. And that's why, when the lottery news came out in early September, many of us were really, really deeply disappointed in the results because it was not what we expected when we passed the legislation, and certainly is not what we expect as this program continues. Equity is got to be front and center of this program, or we got to shut it down.
Well, and as you know, what's happening right now is sort of anti-equity, because now you have all these people, a lot of whom have invested a lot of money, not just in the dispensary, but the craft grows that are also awaiting movement. So the way I talk about it, sort of, applicants treading water, bleeding money right now, and you got the sharks circling, and the sharks are the investors. who want to get, a piece of this action at a discount. And the more companies bleed money into the water, the more these sharks are going to get when they finally take a bite. And so what can you tell us about what's going on most immediately? I know there's been conversation in the Black Caucus. Can you bring us up to date as sort of where things stand, what folks might expect?
Well, I'll tell you, after the debacle in September, a lot of things have happened and transpired. Fortunately, because we've all been able to come together and organize and rally and raise holy hell, we've been able to have the lottery postponed. And working with the medical cannabis community, working with organizations like the Cannabis Equity Illinois and SEEN and so many others, I do believe that our voices are being heard, and that's why you have not seen the administration move forward with a lottery. We have to continue to raise our voices, and we have to continue to demand that we continue to be heard on this issue before a lottery is held, if it is indeed ever held. We have to make sure that transparency is at the forefront, because what we saw back in September, part of that anger was that there just was no transparency. And so we have to have transparency before there's a lottery. We have to make sure all of you are comfortable with the process before there's a lottery, and then we move forward. And I'm getting the impression from what I'm seeing out of the administration that our cries on that issue are being heard. And so we have to continue pressing on. I know the Black Caucus is working on the Black agenda, and there are several of these issues in the cannabis space are on that agenda. We are certainly hoping that it is safe and healthy enough for us to go down in September, in January, the first week of January, for a lame duck session, and get some of these cleanups that we need in statute, so that we can see some of this real equity that we all expect.
So how's it going to work? I mean, you got your own issues. You're in leadership. You're working through the different scenarios that might happen in January. Care to, give the odds on you all heading down, after New Year's? I worry about that.
Well, I'll tell you, right now we're in the beginning of the surge that they say is the Thanksgiving surge. And then we have Christmas coming amongst us, and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So many doctors are expecting a surge upon a surge. Take it from me. You don't want COVID-19. You don't want to go through this, and we need to make sure that people are, washing their hands, watching their distance, and wearing their masks wherever they go. We have a pretty close circle, and if COVID-19 can penetrate our little small circle, it can penetrate yours. And that's my fear with regard to a lame duck session, or even session for the early part of next year. December, January, and February are being projected to just be horrible months for COVID. And I just don't know if we're actually going to indeed get to go down there. Certainly, we're all hoping to. We have an agenda. We're ready. We've properly planned for the moment. But right now, we're watching these COVID numbers closely.
Are things going to move more online? Is that sort of something you guys are talking about? Is that something that sort of will probably get addressed as part of the other conversations about incoming leadership team, et cetera? Where are you on making the online transition?
Hey, Mark, I'm glad you asked that question, because I was one of 59 House members who voted in favor of remote legislating back in May, when we did convene in the special pandemic session. It came up one vote short because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle didn't want to kill the Springfield economy, so they voted no to remote legislating. And unfortunately, that just wasn't realistic. And the bill failed, and here we are. Only the Senate passed remote legislating, and the House does not have that ability. So I would hope that when we do convene, whether it's in lame duck session or the beginning of the new General Assembly on January 13th, that one of our first orders of business is to pass remote legislating, especially with all the experts saying that, January, February are going to be tough months for COVID. I'm a supporter of it. I think it's a good thing to do. Look what we're doing here today. It's an effective means of communicating, and we can certainly do a lot of committee work and things of that nature remotely.
So talk us through a little bit about the Black Caucus agenda, and obviously it's a multifaceted agenda. There's, equity essentially has to be reasserted by the Black Caucus in every segment of life, whether it's healthcare or criminal justice or education. We're lacking in equity in all those things. And I assume you'll have a very broad agenda. How does cannabis fit into some of those issues? Because, cannabis is not just a selling pot kind of thing. You guys got a lot of other things that you're using cannabis money for. And so talk to us a little bit about first of all, the Black Caucus agenda, and then what some of the intersections into the cannabis universe are.
Well, Mark, the Black Caucus, both the House and Senate members have been working all summer long on the development of a caucus agenda that's been centered around 4 pillars. And those pillars include criminal justice reform. It includes workforce development and equity opportunities. It includes opportunities in healthcare and human services. And, of course, cannabis is right in the middle of the equity part, access and equity and workforce development. I mean, cannabis fits squarely in a couple of our pillars. And so, we have talked a lot about it. We've got some policy proposals that we're going to put forward to strengthen our ability to take advantage of this billion-dollar industry. It's looking like by the close of 2020, the sale of recreational cannabis is going to net the state $1 billion. This is a very profitable industry, and we need to make sure that we're all benefiting from this, not just those that are wealthier. And so you can be assured that our agenda takes care of that. Right now, what we're doing is we're going to different groups and doing presentations and building support for what hopefully will be a vote in January. We're meeting with the Urban League. We're meeting with the Joint Elected Black Caucus. We're meeting with various groups, doing specific presentations and building support and making tweaks here and there as we're getting feedback from everyone. But the nuts and bolts of the agenda is done and ready to go. Legislation is being drafted so that we're prepared for a lame duck session.
So you mentioned the initial rollout of the dispensary licenses now being held up, and I think, first of all, thank you. There are a few of you who stepped forward, take leadership on that. Yourself, your seatmate LaShawn Ford, you guys made sure the people were heard, and a lot of us really appreciate that. We see you as champions. Are there? So how's it going to work? I mean, there's a ton of different cannabis stuff. Some of it is social equity. Some of it is just sort of what industry needs and technical fixes. Some of it is future stuff. What gets addressed first? I know people were real upset about, for example, needing to have perfect scores. I know people were upset about, the fact that it sort of turned out that a key deciding factor was the veterans piece. And I'm sure you've heard about that. That sort of that 5 points for veteran made all the difference in the world between the ones who hit the lottery or not. So what are the specific sort of pieces that you're looking to address sooner rather than later?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that no matter what happens, when all is said and done, that we have a better process that comes from this. and that the process will include allowing applicants to address any alleged deficiencies. I've had people in my community come to me and say, hey, we didn't get points for residency. And here, look, I was able to prove that I live right here in the community. So how did I not get a point for living in the community? And so we need to make sure that there's ample opportunity to address letters of deficiency. We need to make sure that there's opportunities to review applications. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 23 years. In many of my areas of practice, administrative review is an important opportunity. And administrative review for me means that if the state, the agency in charge of this process doesn't get it right, maybe you have an opportunity to go into the circuit court and have a judge take a look at what was done and make a determination of whether or not it was done correctly. I do believe there has to be some aspect of administrative review. And I also think there has to be, some type of process that allows for someone who doesn't have a perfect score to end up in a lottery. These are many ideas that I've heard from folks in your space. I've really enjoyed talking with Peter Contos and Akile from Cannabis Equity, Illinois, on a lot of these ideas. And I've taken them back to my colleagues and shared them with my colleagues. And we're working to address many of these specific issues that I've just mentioned. You're muted, Mark.
I'm sure Peter is excited to hear you mention his name because he's watching live, and as are a number of other notable folks. One in particular, speaking of judges, Judge Shelley Hayes sent a message thanking you for your advocacy on this issue. So we are hearing a lot about true social equity applicants, okay, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe it's the difference between grassroots and AstroTurf, right? So what, this is of particular, I think, profound interest to me in terms of what you think about it, because you've had this, and I'm a lobbyist, so I look at some of the particular things that legislators care about. One of the things that I love that you care about is the diversity of contracting of the supply chain of some of the health plans that the state has given business to, right? And so you've been on that, saying you promised us a lot of this work would go to minority contractors, and it's not. And I think some of that speaks to this issue of true social equity. So I guess I ask you from two perspectives. One is sort of just a legislator, as well as sort of, I guess a Black man. What does social equity in cannabis mean? And then I also ask you as a lawyer, separately, what can we do to actually sort of legislate social equity that, how close, because maybe in some ways we didn't get close enough, right? Because we couldn't just say X percentage of license ought to go to X percentage, to these communities. So there had to be this thing about the war on drugs and rectifying the harm caused by the war on drugs. And so the definition of social equity was not related to minority in any status in any kind of way. It was related to other measures. So in terms of, sort of how you feel as just a guy about what's fair, and in terms of a lawyer, how can we actually define social equity down enough to where it'll be acceptable sort of to most people as true social equity?
Well, let me first say that I think, social equity means real opportunity. It's not just a slogan. It's not just something we're saying and talking about. We're actually doing it, and we're doing it, and we can demonstrate it based on the data, giving people who otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity, to be a part of something so special. I'm sick and tired of opportunities only going to those who have the wealth and can afford to get the access to it. We're trying to create new wealth. And to me, unless we're creating new wealth, we don't have social equity. People that grew up like me and lived at the food pantry and ate government block cheese and things of that nature, they need to have an opportunity to experience some of this wealth that many of the people in my community were locked up for, that people are making money off of legally now, almost $1 billion this year, were locked up for years and years and years. Those are the same people that need to have opportunity to make money legally and create wealth. And I look to folks like you, Mark, and your organizations to help policymakers like me make sure we get it right. You guys need to tell us also what we need to do to make sure we're getting it right. I don't want to tell you how we do it right. I need you to tell us so that we go into that room and we know what the advocates who are the experts on this issue are telling us we need to do to get it right. That's why I love these opportunities. I don't turn them down because I think it's important that we hear from the folks in the trenches telling us how we get it right when we go in and try to make fixes to it.
So this has been an issue in your community. You've heard sort of actual feedback from constituents is something that they care about?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I've had several folks in my community who applied and, they had high expectations based on everything that we said, and they were rightfully disappointed with the results. And so my phones didn't stop ringing back in September after the announcement came out from the administration. So it's quieted down significantly of late, but that initial couple of weeks was kind of crazy.
Well, and that's part of, I think what some of the folks are concerned about is that, the governor isn't hearing from them as much as he was, and maybe is not as sensitive to sort of some of the pain out there. To that point, have you had, are you aware of anything on the timing of any of this? So I understand that there are obviously disputes. There are 75 licenses that are disputed now. Some people are talking about another 75 dispensary licenses coming online. And then you have the craft grow, the infuser, and the transport. And again, these are the folks who, had to have facilities locked down and stuff like that. So some of them are paying a lot of money. Do you have a sense at all about when things can actually move forward on craft? First, I guess on craft grow, because craft grow is not, it hasn't been announced. There's nothing wrong. There's no controversy. Assuming everything's been done right, this is an opportunity for them to redeem themselves in a certain way. So do you know what's happening? I mean, we're going to get anything over the next couple of months in terms of licenses?
Well, Mark, I haven't heard anything specific from the administration, partly because I know that former Senator Toy Hutchinson moved from being the czar to a senior advisor to the governor. She was replaced with a new czar. That person is now in place and getting up to speed. Here we are in the holiday season and getting prepared for the 102nd General Assembly. So I would advise you all to stay vigilant and be prepared the first of the year to ratchet back up with reaching out to legislators, reaching out to the administration, and making noise. Because, when we do go back in January, things can move fast and anything can happen any day. You know how the system works. You've been around it a long time. But I don't expect much right now in the quiet holiday season. Tonight begins Hanukkah, and then now we're 15 days away from Christmas and so on. So just know that come January, be ready. So we need to, get the groups, organized and ready to have a bunch of meetings, whether it's via Zoom, making phone calls, whatever. Don't stop.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. We've got some questions coming through on chat. One question for you, Representative, is what do you think about the idea of sort of a citizen panel being, involved in sort of determining social equity? Would it be, I wonder if any fewer people would, if somebody doesn't win a license, are they going to complain any less if it was a citizen panel that chose social equity? That's one perspective. On the other perspective, in a very positive way, it takes one to know one sometimes. And so we can't have some people somewhere, faceless, nameless bureaucrats, deciding who qualifies for social equity. By the way, I don't mean you. I mean like the scorers at KPMG, as an example. So do you think there's room for citizens to get involved? Because a lot of people are sort of talking about a citizen panel of some sort.
I'm open to that idea. I'm not against it. And to me, whether citizens are involved or not, whatever the process is, it has to be extremely transparent. You're going to have disappointed people if they don't get a license. But if you're transparent and people know what the process was and they can see that it was fair and honest, you're not going to get the pushback that you got in September. And so whatever happens, whether there's a citizen panel involved or not, we have to be committed to transparency in the process. And so I think what we need to do is make sure, that the advocacy groups are in agreement on what a process could look like. And we're advocating for that out of the administration.
At what point do you think the industry will be mature enough to start looking at things like how is the industry supply chain diverse and things like that? Is that something that's going to happen over time?
Can you repeat that question, Mark?
So in terms of the industry, right now there are, a lot of big companies involved. A lot of other industries have had to sort of articulate their sense of diversity. They've had to diversify their supply chain. And again, I know that's something that you've looked at, diversity on boards of directors and other things. We're still sort of very early in the game now talking about social equity, which I don't believe is the same thing as diversity. And diversity of the supply chain in particular is something that I think you and I care about because you got to follow the money. How does, the industry is just developing, should there be, I don't know, some kind of a certification that you have a diverse supply chain or something like that ought to be part of your brand? What do you think about that?
Well, anyone that knows me knows that I am a huge advocate of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm constantly fighting for DEI initiatives. And don't blink, don't go too far. We're fighting for diversity in the supply chains, not just in the cannabis space, but in many different spaces. Again, the goal is to create new wealth. And you do that in a whole variety of different ways. And, supplier diversity is important. And I've been a big believer in it my entire professional career. And so if you look at a lot of the bills that I file, I have filed legislation that would promote supplier diversity in higher education, financial institutions, yep, insurance companies, you name it. And so this space is not escaping me, brother. Supply chain diversity is critical. And so this is a new space in Illinois, but you can bet there's going to constantly be a lot of trailer legislation.
Thank you. Somebody said, are you upset pot's legal now? I said, beer's been legal a long time. We still need lobbyists. But Representative, I know you have a hard stop in about a minute. Is there anything you want to sort of add? Any thoughts, anything people should know about cannabis and the direction of cannabis in Illinois? Hey,
listen, we wouldn't be here without all of you. And, we are far from having it right. We got to keep on fighting to get there. So keep on speaking up, keep on, doing what you're doing, because without you, we wouldn't be here. And, we need activists, we need advocates to continue to be out there pushing this envelope so that we can take it as far as we can go.
Well, and the advocates need champions, and we thank you for being a champion for us.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate all of you.
All right, keep recovering and feel better. Hopefully one of these days we'll actually be able to see each other in person. And I look forward to, I know you're not feeling well because I don't see you in a $3,000 suit. So I hope we're back to that sometime soon.
I didn't bring those down to the basement.
Thank you very much, Representative. Be well.
Hey, be well. Take care. Wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear a mask, everyone.
You got it. Thank you.
Sage advice. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Cannabis Community Insider. Enjoy the rest of your day.